I am Don Tess, better known as the Dawn of Beer.
And I'm Em Sutter, better known as Pints and Panels.
Welcome to episode 60 of the All About Beer podcast. Every 2 weeks, we talk with leading experts and take a deep dive into one topic in beer. This week on the show, we're going to talk about West Coast IPA. But first, please visit allaboutbeer.com and follow us on social media at allaboutbeer. And if you're feeling generous, please visit patreon.com/allaboutbeer to support this show and others. So, Em,
Yes.
I've heard rumors that there was a time in America when IPA was bitter. Have you heard about this?
I'm from New England, so no, I don't know anything about that. I know nothing about what you speak. That sounds
Oh,
wild. That's wild. Wild times.
yeah, like a bitter beer and like clear. I heard it's clear.
No,
Yeah.
blasphemy.
Well, we will find out if this is true with our two amazing guests. But first, if you would like to help support the All About Beer podcast, please reach out to podcast@allaboutbeer.com. Speaking of supporting the show, here is a word from our sponsor.
Welcome to Estrella Galicia, where brewing excellence has been a family tradition since 1906. They're all about lager, rooted in the German brewing heritage. Maintaining their commitment to tradition, they brew exclusively in their original brewery in La Coruña, Spain. Each beer boasts its own distinctive recipe. No shortcuts, no compromises. They shun high-gravity tricks and avoid additives, even in their alcohol-free beers, and stick firmly to traditional methods. Their passion for beer sets them apart as they embrace and celebrate the art of brewing. At Estrella Galicia, they love beer above all things. Experience the difference and know more about it on Instagram at Estrella Galicia, USA.
John Segal was a hop geek at birth. Proof? He brought a block of hops to show and tell in first grade. He received his brewing legs at Anchor Brewing Company in San Francisco, fresh out of college. After his stint at Anchor, John joined the family hop business. 5 years later, he parted company with his father to work in the media industry. When his father passed away, John stepped back into the hop business. At that time, Segal Ranch had been an Anheuser-Busch grower for over 25 years, and Anchor Brewing Company was Segal Ranch's only craft brewing partner. John envisioned broadening the range of craft brewers that Segal Ranch served and replicating this productive grower-to-brewer model. Today, Segal Ranch has wonderful direct relationships with some of the top craft breweries in the world, and John is having a blast doing it. Welcome to the show, John.
Well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
So, we want to talk about West Coast IPA. I hear that they use an ingredient in making West Coast IPA called hops.
I've never
Yes,
heard of
indeed.
I've never heard of it. So
Oh,
I'm really excited
it,
about this
it could be a
episode.
rumor, but that's why we have John here. He's going to tell us if this rumor is true. And, how has the demand for hops shifted over the years as IPA, like super grew in popularity, and then there was kind of a shift in other types of IPA. Tell us what you've seen as a supplier.
Well, it's been a wonderful run. I mean, if you go back 15 years ago, the IPA was really not as popular a style, and it's just been meteoric as far as the word IPA and that style of beer and how it's impacted the beer business, craft beer business, of course, but just the beer business in general. And the word IPA can mean a lot of things to a lot of folks, but the bottom line here is the hop growers that means it's usually 2 to 3 to 4 pounds per barrel of beer. So it's very good for our farm and for the hop business in general.
Okay, cool. Um, West Coast IPA is kind of marked by its bitterness, and hazy IP got popular for a while, and I heard that, it's oils that brewers are more looking for there. Do you see that, or have you seen that in the demand side for hops?
Yes, it's interesting. I always look at brewmasters and brewers as chefs, and chefs are always looking for the next great product. And within the hop industry, if you look at the shifts over the last years, Cascade, which was first commercially cultivated at the Siegel Ranch, was a very
Oh,
popular hop. Yeah, my father planted 56013 back in 1968, and in 1972, 73 range, he had a great relationship with Fritz Maytag at Anchor. And my father turned Fritz onto Cascades. And, 74, 75 is when Fritz launched the first dry hop ale in America, Liberty Ale, which really impacted so many of the great brewers of today. So the Seagull Ranch obviously has a great affinity and love, and very proud of the Cascade variety. But today, you have other varieties that have kind of eclipsed it, and that's progress. That's what's the beautiful thing. You have brewmasters who are looking for new flavors, more tropical, or different accents you want to put on a beer, on an IPA, and that's exciting stuff when new products are being used, new hop varieties are being used in a recipe.
Yeah.
That's so cool. What a great story about your dad. You guys are like your IPA. Like you're the
Yeah, it's Mitch Steele, when he wrote his great book, he contacted me, and it's I always like to kid around that I usually wear a post-it with our story on my shoulder at the farm when people come to visit the farm, of the Cascade story. But it really is true. The variety was really languishing in Oregon. It was developed by Dr. Al Hanold, who's a great breeder. Then Chuck Zimmerman, who was a good friend of my dad's, was then running the Prosser Research Station. And Chuck went on to develop and breed Simcoe and Centennial and Chinooks, these very important hops today. And he had 56013. At the time, back in the late 60s, American growers were really just growing L1s and L8s, clusters and Bouillon and Brewer's Gold. And the Noble Aroma hops were getting a lot more money per pound. And that always used to piss off my father. It's like, why can't American hop growers grow an aroma hop? So 5613 was rubbed there. My dad put a few acres in the ground in Grandview at our farm. And then he worked for 4 years and finally got Coors Brewing Company in 72 to pull the trigger on Cascade. AB followed right behind. And then a year or so later, Fritz then used Cascade in Liberty Ale. And the rest is really history. It was wonderful. It was a dominating hop for IPAs. And it's still, there's still almost 3,000 acres in the ground in Washington State in this year. So.
There are many varieties of hops out there. Cascade is great for West Coast IPA. Are there other ones that you're growing or you see where you live that are best for West Coast IPA? And why do you think, if you mentioned some of them, why do you think that they are good for West Coast IPA?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Chinook, and
so am I.
You are? Oh, good.
It's such a good.
I love Chinook, and the joke at the farm is we think we should just relaunch Chinook with a different name, and then young brewers will discover Chinook again.
Oh, yeah, marketing,
Chinook,
rebranding.
Chinook 2, the Chinookening. I don't know.
The Chinookening.
As you know, Em, the Chinook has such a great pine, and there's also some citrus notes. Chinook is a great hop in a West Coast IPA. There's a drying factor that Chinooks lend to a recipe. So I'm a huge fan of Chinook, and we still grow some, but it's just not as popular as it used to be.
But other hops, you mentioned a couple. Anything
else?
Well,
Chinook I love. I don't know. Let's see. There's Centennial I think also is a great hop in a myriad of recipes. You get that great grapefruit and citrus notes, and then you can get a little dankness in a Centennial product, beer. So Centennial, of course, is a great hop in a West Coast style IPA, and still being used by a lot of, if you look at Founders, Centennial IPA is an example. That's a phenomenal beer. It's an older recipe, but it still holds up great, and it's still drinking great today. And a lot of the Centennials in that recipe come from our farm.
Okay. So, again, I'm not a professional brewer, but I understand that most of the bitterness comes from hops, comes from alpha acids, specifically isomerized alpha acids. And I'm vaguely aware of types of alpha acids like cohumulone and adhumulone. Right. So what are these different acids, and why does it matter that they're different? And what is that difference?
Yeah, they all lend, and I'm not an expert in this either, but they all lend different attributes to a recipe. Also it's also like the myrcene, and there's a lot of aspects within the hops that if you're dry hopping, they're going to give you different aromas and different flavors. If you put them in the boil, obviously you're isomerizing, getting bitterness. But then, a lot of brewers are using the whirlpool as a way to coax out different elements of the hop. And then you have the hot side and the dry side for dry hopping. So again, there's so many ways. It's almost like a chili recipe. You take a basic chili recipe, but then you add certain flavoring to it at different times during when you're cooking it, and it really creates different aromas and flavors to the final product.
Mm. Do you think it's something that like home brewers or pro brewers should specifically care about? Like I know on a shipment of hops, it will say the alpha acid content, but does it necessarily break down the different acids?
Well, I think home brewers should definitely always look at that. I mean, if you have a super high alpha hop, it's going to if you keep it in the boil for a certain period of time, you're obviously going to get a much more bitter beer, and you could also get something that would be it could be a little stringent too. So, I mean, for instance, if you use comets, which I happen to love Comet also in an IPA, if you use Comet judiciously, you get a wonderful lemon citrus note. But if you use it too much or too long, then you're going to get a lot of astringency, which will not make your IPA not very balanced.
I see. I find that interesting because different time people should experiment with hops really. So
Yeah,
that's kind of what you're saying.
it's a timing issue with hops, and how you use it, and where and when you use it is really key in getting whatever you want to get out of your recipe.
Okay, cool.
So like hops are really popular, obviously. You know that. Everyone has their favorites. I like that you're a seaman, like that's old school, and I appreciate that. The like Centennial Chinook, especially with the West Coast IPA, I think everyone kind of focuses on the new.
Right.
And don't overthink it. Like West Coast IPAs are so great with those C hops.
Yes.
Yep.
Brewers listening right now, just get
We
some
beg
C.
you.
Go C.
Well,
But yeah, what's something most people don't know about hops that you wish people appreciated more? Like, hey, maybe use some C hops.
Well, I think that's the main message. If I had to jump off right now and not speak again, I think that a lot of the public varieties out there, and listen, Mosaic and Citra, and there are a lot of great hops that are proprietary out there, and they're actually dominating the landscape right now. But I do believe that you can make a great beer with public varieties, whichever combination you choose to use. Not taking anything away from Citra Mosaic, they're great varieties. Amarillo's a great variety, but it's always nice when I taste a beer. I just had a beer from KCBC here in the New York area. They did a beer called No Juice for You. It's a West Coast IPA. It's 100% Seagull Ranch Centennial, and it was just
Nice.
fabulous. Just a great glass of beer. It was grapefruit pith and just wonderful to drink and clean and balanced, and absolutely wonderful beer. And so there's no reason why home brewers or brewers in general can't brew a great beer, using just public hops.
I remember a few years ago reading about how a lot of the younger craft beer drinkers now have maybe never had a Budweiser.
Right,
And I'm
right.
thinking that there are younger IPA drinkers now who have never had a Centennial hopped IPA or a Cascade hopped IPA. So I implore these youngins, please.
Well,
Um, so sorry, I was asking earlier about bitterness, which is, I think, something that people associate with West Coast IPA. But of course, aroma and flavor are big things. So, you know, do you have a favorite in aroma or flavor hop? And do you think of those two? I think a lot of people think of aroma hop and flavor hop as almost synonyms. I'm kind of hesitant to say that, but or they use the same hop for aroma and flavor. Do you think of it the same way, or should people be thinking about it differently?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because in the old days when you used to, let's say like a Ballantine ale, like you're going way back when, they'd use Brewer's Gold and Bouillon, which are pretty high alpha related hops at the time and kind of dank. And then they'd use some noble aroma hops on the back end of the boil or just before knockout to kind of give you some beautiful aroma complexities to the finished beer. Today I think that we have so many different great hops out there that it's really up to the brewer and how they want to use hops in their recipe. I mean, yeah, I mean, I prefer a crisp, balanced, slightly bitter, beautiful aroma beer that has a nice long finish, but it's not sweet, not too tropical, not too sweet. Those lend themselves more to the hazy style, which there's nothing wrong with them. It's just for my personal preference. I like having a beer where if you take a sip, as my father always taught me, you take a sip and then it dries out your palate and it makes you want to take another sip. And that my dad always taught me. That's what hops can do to a beer. It can stimulate the palate to make you want more. And that's what I would strive for if I was brewing an IPA.
Yeah, I like that.
Well, I know I want a beer.
Yes.
Me too.
Yeah.
Why don't we
Yeah.
record these in the afternoon? We should record these. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Last question. Anything new? Like anything new people should be looking forward to in the hop world? You mentioned before we went on the air about a new hop that you're
Yeah,
very excited about.
yes, we're really excited. We have three new hops, but one in particular is called Tangier. Tangier is from our own nursery. Martin Ramos, our ranch manager of 28 years, Vinny Chilurzo gave him the nickname the Hop Whisperer. We've had a breeding program for a very long time, and we had this hop in the field in 2023. We just had enough for 3 bales, so 600 pounds. And when you rub this hop in the field, it literally was as if you just peeled a navel orange. It was just unbelievable. And I kept on going back to it. And then we handpicked it and got 600 pounds. And Russian River came out. They rubbed it in 2023 and loved it. Vinny said the exact same thing. It was as if he was peeling an orange. Well, he did extensive testing with the 5 boxes he bought from us in 2023. This year, we went from a half acre to 25 acres of Tangier. And Vinny has done extensive testing and really loves this hop. We are now in contract with them, and we are going to be putting in about 45 total acres now for 25 crops. So it's gone from a half acre to 45 acres in 2025. And a good portion of that's going to Russian River. So we're very excited. And there are other breweries who also express real excitement about Tangier. So we think it's a hop that's going to get a lot of action. Actually, the new brewer has an article by Stan Morris about, and it mentions our new varieties. And Tangier there's a quote from Vinny in it about Tangier. So we're very excited about that hop.
Does Russian River know how to make IPA?
Yeah, they really do.
Awesome. John, thank you for your time. Before we let you go, can you share your social media handle so people can keep up to date and find out when the first Tangier beers start hitting shelves?
Sure. It's on Instagram. It's at Seagull Hop Ranch, Segal Hop Ranch, at Seagull Hop Ranch on Instagram. And we have just me who does the social media. So if you have any complaints, then you're gonna talk right to the owner. So it's not a very big crew here at our small farm.
Awesome. Love it.
Very cool.
Thank you, John.
Thank you very much, guys. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.
And we'll be right back with Kane Christensen of Trademark Brewing to tell us about brewing the best West Coast IPA in America.
Indulge in the elegance of 1906 Reserva Especial, a premium Hellesbock with a 6.5% ABV. This exceptional lager brings together brewing tradition, unique character, and the finest ingredients. Brewed with Pilsner and toasted malt and Hallertau Pearl hops, 1906 Reserva Especial is a testament to quality. Its bright amber color and toasted malt aroma are complemented by subtle notes of caramel and coffee with floral and herbal hints from the hops. Every sip reveals a toasted sensation of warm and a well-integrated finish. Experience the art of brewing, 100% made in Galicia, Spain. Know more about it on estrellagalicia.com.
Kane Christensen grew up in San Clemente, California, and started brewing at Pizza Port San Clemente as assistant brewer in 2012. He started at Pizza Port making pizzas, bussing tables, and bartending. But it wasn't until 2012, when the old assistant brewer left, that Kane had the opportunity to step into the brewing side of the company. In 2015, he transferred to Pizza Port's production brewery and worked his way up to lead brewer. He didn't have a lot of creative freedom on anything they brewed, so after 2 years, he transferred back to San Clemente Pub as the head brewer. He worked there for a few years, then bounced around to a couple of other breweries before landing at Trademark, where he has been since 2022. All the while, he's been working to improve his craft by talking to everyone he meets, and he also completed the Advanced Brewing Theory course at Cybele to become a better brewer. Welcome to the show, Kane.
Hi, thank you, Don. Happy to be here.
Okay, so Trademark, specifically your beer Codebreaker IPA, recently won gold for West Coast IPA at the Great American Beer Festival. IPA always very heavily entered category. I don't know if it was the most heavily entered this year, but always very heavily entered. So, how do you make the best West Coast IPA in America?
I feel like I'm still like reeling from that award.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
I
you
mean,
should. I mean, it's
congr
very, yeah.
congratulations. I mean, it's a
thank you.
huge honor. It's amazing. So way to go. And yeah, how'd you do it?
Yeah. Um, you know, achieving my lifelong dreams as, a home brewer from like 14 years ago, so it's pretty cool.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so I mean, just digging into the recipe on stuff. I guess what you really try to do is just, malt's a second thought. It's kind of just something on the light side. For this, it's just a good old raw two-row with a little kiss of Wireman Munich, just because you can pry that
Okay.
on my cold dead hands. That's a Pete Sport thing. I feel like a lot of us used to do. Um, and that bit of dextrose, so the corn sugar to help dry it out, 100% fermentable along there.
Oh,
Yeah, just kind of anything to let the hops kind of shine, make the malt just like clean and simple in the background. It's kind of what we're going for.
and yet you add that little bit of Munich, like you obviously think it adds something.
Yeah, it's like one of those, I don't know, little, I would say secret ingredient, but not so much. But I mean, it's nice to have a little depth rather than just super one-dimensional. Even though I really want malt to not be the focus in any capacity, it's like this makes me feel better. It's not too boring this way.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
What's the ABV of the beer?
So this beer is a 7%, kind of just right where I like the West Coast. It's kind of like the low sevens. I think is a pretty nice spot for it.
Why do you think that? Why do you think seven? I agree with you, but I was just thinking in my head like why, and I don't actually know why I like West Coast at seven. Do you have an answer?
No, I don't think I really do. I think that's just one of those things where it just seems like I feel like a lot of my favorite ones are always in that range,
hmm
Really blessed in SoCal to have a lot of like fantastic West Coast IPA breweries around. And I look at them for a lot of inspiration too, and just kind of want to take those parts that I like about all of them and craft it into something. They all seem to be around 7%, and I'm like, yeah, that's what an IPA should be at. This makes sense to me.
Are there any, when you were crafting this recipe, were there any beers, especially in your area in SoCal, that you were like, I want to make something like this? Or were there any, did you take inspiration from anyone, any particular brewery?
I mean, I think like a lot of it is let's see. I've always had a lot of respect for Ian McCall's beer from Rip and then currently Ism now that he started over there. Because it's always just been very clean and just hoppy and dank as fuck. And it was always like,
Nice.
man, how do you do this? So, definitely picked his brain on a handful of things. He took home a gold for his Western Standard Time at World Beer Cup this year as well. Uh, so definitely picked his brain a bunch on that, see what they were doing right. Trying to, hang out with those guys and get a feel for it and how it's done.
Nice.
Okay. So, I think there are people who just think, oh, IPA, that's easy. You just throw a whole ton of hops in the beer, and then like you don't even have to brew very well because the hops will cover any off flavor. You don't have to think about subtlety because it's just hops. So,
Yeah.
what do you wish people understood about great West Coast IPA, both from a brewing side and then also from a sensory side? Like, it's more than just tasting hops and bitterness.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, let's see. I mean, from a brewing side, I think, it's not just as great as that it would be to just throw, 7 pounds, 10 pounds a barrel and have it taste good. Uh, that's not quite the case. I think, all kind of like found out. It's like, yeah, you want more hop flavors, throw more hops. That kind of has a point where it just kind of gets green and vegetal and not particularly great. Uh, And to really like hit those amounts, I think it's important to choose your hops wisely. Like have you know, if you're fortunate enough to be able to do hop selection, it's great to be able to pick out the characteristics that you're really looking for. So you're not just ordering spot hops and kind of roll the dice every time you get it. Because ultimately, hops are plants. They're going to change from crop year to crop year, batch to batch, farm to farm. Uh, so I think it's really important to kind of know what you want, know your ingredients on that. But also just getting back to the thing I was saying, you can't just throw a crap load of hops in there and expect it to come out good. We have a lot of good tools these days, honestly. There's so many different hop products. And this beer used both Mosaic Incognito, which is a sort of like resinous liquid hop product used in the pool. It's 100% hop derived. And it's
Okay.
kind of just all those delicious aromatics in there and stuff. Um, and then we use that in both the Whirlpool and in the Knockout on that, which is a little something we learned from North Park Beer Co. Another podcast actually. Something that Kelsey McNair does over there is he mix because it's meant to be used on the hot side, so you like mix it in with hot wort, chuck it right in the fermenter, and now you're not worried about leaving any of that goodness behind.
Do you have any other
But
like favorite hops you use for the West Coast? Or like
um,
like when you're drinking one, are you like, all right, this is it. This is the one. Like we talked to John Siegel earlier and he's all about the sea hops. And actually wanted to ask about your like thoughts on sea hops and West Coast because that's so like I can't believe I'm going to say this, but sea hops are old school
yeah, right.
now,
Like
which is like what the but like yeah, I don't know. Maybe they are, and maybe there are newer hops that do a better job. I don't know.
yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is trends have kind of gone more towards the like bright and fruity.
Hmm.
Uh, when like citrus, I feel like has been left behind a bit. I mean, dank is personally one of my favorite characteristics on there. Um, I think the sea hops can do some of those qualities like really nicely. I think they just don't quite have the same intensity of like Mosaic. Simcoe's had a lot of staying power.
Mm.
There's a main two hops of Codeberg, just Mosaic and Simcoe, but I still really love the sea hops. I mean, Centennial, I think I love adding that in like a little bit gradually on hot side for certain like double IPAs because I think it adds
Hmm.
this like excuse me, a beautiful like resiny dankness to it. And then like on the other hand, something I've been like wanting to do, and I've played around with it a little bit, but just throwing Columbus back in the mix actually. That's something that
Oh,
Ooh, oh,
yeah,
hello.
yeah, CTZ.
right? Yeah, because that's like the super dank thing, like what a lot of people are kind of doing out here. You see it like Rip and Ism, a handful of other spots, North Park. They like using the Columbus cryo hop as part of the dry hop.
Oh,
Uh,
Um, so the cryo, you're kind of getting just, all the goodness of the hops. It's less vegetal matter and all just like the real oils, flavoring components, all that goodness in there. And so by just having that of like a touch of Columbus with all these modern new school hops, it's cool. You're still getting this really nice, like dank backbone,
hmm.
but it's not the like too much of the garlicky, sweaty socks Columbus. You're just getting this like really cool, like weedy kind of dank thing in the back.
um, like everybody's you're talking about Mosaic's incognito and not leaving any of the flavor behind, and that's why you like it at knockout and stuff like that. Do you think about, it's West Coast IPA, which should have a marked bitterness to it. So do you care about the bittering hops, or is it, an alpha acid is an alpha acid?
I definitely still care about the bittering hops. I mean, I've definitely heard people of like, yeah, the school of like, it doesn't matter. You're not tasting any of it. Maybe it's just superstition on my part. I always really love Chinook as a bittering hop. And then
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry,
it's so good as a bittering hop. It's this nice, clean, like
You're
crisp. I
making
don't
us
know.
very happy, Kane.
yeah, we're yeah. I'm all about the Chinook. I want more respect for Chinook. I feel like
It's
it's just such a good hop for like so many different. It's just the flavor's so good, and everyone's kind of like, and I'm like, no, Chinook.
yeah. No, and I think that's one of those things too, where it's like if you're really choosy on where you're getting it from, like my personal favorites are either Hophead Farms or the Michigan Chinook or Crosby in Yakima there.
Oh,
Um, in that they kind of just like really good Chinook. It's not just like eating a pine tree. You're still getting that for sure. And I still love that quality.
Hmm.
But you kind of get more of this like fresh cut pineapple, and it's really beautiful
Ooh.
and lovely. It just, works nicely and stuff.
Hmm.
Um, but and anyways, I was back to real quick on the bittering thing of it. Something we started or we did at Trademark, which I hadn't done before, that I've really kind of swung around to, is we actually use the hop bittering CO2 extracts. So it's another like pure resinous thing where it's just, all those good alpha acids in there. It kind of makes the yield a bit better, but pretty negligible. But it's mostly just like the cleanest bitterness. And I'm really about that because it's just a nice lingering bitterness that just kind of disappears at the end, doesn't outstay its welcome, and I've become a really big fan of it.
So is it
Okay.
just the CO2 extra? Is that just like the goo, the like hop,
Bas-
or okay? Okay, I'm just
Basically,
yeah. So it's just the like it's gonna come in the can. Is that
yeah,
what that
it
is?
it comes in a can, and if you just open the can right up, I feel like it's I don't know, gonna be a little bit like softer consistency than like candle wax almost. Like it's
Oh, good
pretty like
God.
it's like sticky goop. Like if you get some of that on you, you're just gonna have that on you for the rest of your life, I feel like. Um, but yeah, so like we heat it up when I start a brew day, I just chuck those cans on top of the hot liquor tank and it's nice and liquidy by the time I need it in
Mm.
the kettle. And it just does a great job. I don't know. I've been really happy with it.
Hmm.
It sounds like you use a lot of alternative hop products. Um,
Yeah.
like I is that a conscious decision or and it makes the beer better or is it just what you can get?
Um, Initially I was like really against all like these kind of stuff, honestly. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
no, hop should be hops, use pellets. But honestly, it's a lot of tools to have in our it's just more stuff in our toolbox that we can play with and um kind of pull extra flavor out where it's like, let's see here. One of the other things we use, like the extra hop products, are the cryo hops. We use Simcoe and Mosaic Cryo in this beer. And it's kind of at a certain point, we're adding lots of hops. You can kind of get green and vegetal, but these kind of more concentrated ones allow you to kind of like unlock that like, you know, uh, a higher intensity of like flavor, but without being held back by all the vegetal matter that's going to give you that like, well, green and vegetal characteristics. So I mean, as I kind of try to, you know, make my ideal IPA and just always looking for like more aromatics, more flavor. Like I feel like it's never quite smells good enough. You're always chasing something else. Uh, these products kind of really help you get there, but it's still
Hmm.
majority just classic T90 hot pellets because I think there's a lot of character in there, and I've had beers that are like 100% cryo, and it smells great, but on the flavor, it's kind of it loses some character, loses some like charm and stuff on there. I kind of like having a little bit of depth to it, but yeah, just reaching for the stars by using the other stuff.
I guess, the way I thought of some of these alternative hop products is that they're more efficient in terms of you're not losing liquid to absorption by actual hops. But you're saying that there's actually a different flavor that they provide, flavor and aroma.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they're definitely a bit more intense, where it's like a hop provider, like Yakima Chief Hops, for example, recommends on the cryo, like, hey, like try it for, if you used to use 22 pounds of Simcoe, try using 11 pounds of Simcoe cryo, and you should get like the same flavor characteristics.
Yeah.
Not all of them are quite one for one, so it's kind of like an experimenting thing. But yeah, the initial like thought I feel like from all these like hop providers doing similar things, whether it's CGX or Lupamax or Cryo, it's all their proprietary names for them, is they sell it as being like, oh, you'll get better yields in your beer, which you absolutely do, and it's awesome. Like we're a
Yeah.
production brewery, and so we've really been switching our program a bit more over to using some of these products, or more in the dry hops and such, just because T90s absorb so much of your beer.
Right.
Um, but what I feel like the craft brewers ended up doing is like, oh, I can get way more character before I hit that vegetal point. So like, hang on, so I can use even more hops. Like,
Ah.
no, no, the point was to use less, and like, yeah, but I can get more, so I'm gonna do more. You know.
Um, okay, that's cool. Um,
Yeah.
Very quickly, just to touch on malt again, and you did talk about the malt, but I'm just wondering, in terms of the mash, is it just a single step infusion or anything special about how you mash?
Nothing too special on it, honestly. Like we just do So we do have a mash mixer. Our brew house does allow us to do some cool stuff. It's basically a 4 vessel brew house, but it does have a mash press. We can get to that in a second. But just as far as the like mash steps go on that, and it's pretty basic. We just do 145 degrees Fahrenheit for 45 minutes. A nice low temp for the beta amylase to really get all those like fermentable sugars in there to really dry it out. And then we just do 15 minutes at 155, bit of the higher temp, so it does actually give a little bit of non-fermentable sugars in there. But it's just kind of like a little bit of depth thing. Like we don't quite want to dry out the beer too much. It does finish like nice and super dry. Um, but yeah, like nothing too crazy on that, honestly.
Okay, cool. I like that.
So I see on your website that currently on draft you have 6 West Coast IPAs. Um,
Yeah.
how did you decide to enter Codebreaker versus Maximum Overdrive? Well, that's a double IPA, but like Perfect Gentleman, Phase, Creation of IPA, Space Beach, these are all basically 7% West Coast IPAs. What
Yeah.
was what was the what made, or did you enter more than one into the competition? Because some people do that, even though you can only
Just
enter like 6 beers or whatever. What
yeah.
made Codebreaker the one that you were like, we're entering this?
So Codebreaker's been a house IPA for a long time over here at Trademark. It's we've evolved and changed it up and always like fine tuning it. In previous competitions though, it's made it to the last judging table, but it was always just uh quality beer. Other entries were better. Sorry, I'm just like,
Hmm.
damn, all right, like
Yeah.
we're right in there. And so it's just kind of always back to the drawing board and like fine tuning, and like, okay, we're gonna get in there eventually, is obsessing over little details like, okay, like everyone's knocking out with a really low pH. Oh, that makes sense because like, when you add the dry hop, it's gonna raise your pH, but you want that lower pH for a good crispness. Let's start really dialing in that. Let's work on the water profile,
Mm.
Hmm.
experimenting with some like hop products. So it's really like I am very happy with some of those other IPAs. Like Creation of IPA is like one of my favorite ones up there too. Like it's a bunch of HBC 586, now called Crush, and I absolutely love that hop. But Codebreaker was always like, you know, it was always fourth place. We used to joke it was like right there. So it's
Hmm.
like, you know, keep entering it, keep fine tuning it, doing everything you can to make it good, and yeah. So
And yeah, you touched on the water too. Like, what were you doing to fiddle with? What's the water like in Southern California? I'm in Connecticut, so I'm on the complete opposite. I'm thousands
gotcha.
of miles away. And I've been to Long Beach once, in
Okay.
2005. So, um, I don't remember the water profile when I was
You
there.
don't quite remember how the tap water
Yeah, I don't
tastes.
remember what the I remember it.
Um,
I have no, yeah, I don't remember at all. So like, what did you have to do with? Do you have to fiddle with it? Do you have to? Yeah. What's the? Yeah. What do you have to do?
So we are lucky enough to have a reverse osmosis water system. So
Oh,
California's
okay.
water is very hard and high in minerals. But the nice thing with reverse osmosis is it actually goes and strips all those minerals out. So then I can
Hmm.
build a water profile from the ground up. Um, because while there's a lot of different, like mineral content going on in just your, average tap water, especially out here, the ones in brewing, what we really want are, I mean, at least for IPA, it's kind of like a balance of calcium sulfate. It kind of adds to like a good amount of dryness to the beer and this nice like I feel like it kind of like backs up the bitterness, makes it clean. Like it's yeah, very much so. Like we talk about like our ratios of calcium sulfate to calcium chloride, and that's much more of a rounder kind of full-bodied thing. You definitely want some of that still, but you really want sulfate to take the lead.
Hmm.
So we do ours with about using our water calculator. We end up with about um, 3 times as much sulfate as we do chloride because we really want to push that dry, bitter aspect of the water could really play into the beer. So I feel like this is a thing, at least like when I was first getting into brewing in like 2012, it was like, water's the fourth ingredient. It's really important. It makes up
Yes.
the majority of the beer. Everything else is like pretty much seasoning on the water. And it was kind of just going down the rabbit hole, starting to obsess over that, It's like, oh, yeah, I guess there's something to this water stuff. Maybe we should look into this more, you guys. Um,
John Palmer's
Yeah.
proud of you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I just was thinking like John Palmer is just probably like sitting down to like maybe an early dinner and he just went, ooh.
Yeah, my ears are burning. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, definitely. Um, yeah, and it's like it's like it's such a big deal. So it's like, it's definitely one of the harder ingredients to understand though, I feel like, because like hops can just be like, that smells good. I'm gonna use
Mhm.
a shitload of this in my beer, right?
Yeah.
Whereas water, you've got a lot of chemistry going on even before you get to like how it's gonna change the perceived mouthfeel of it. Um, it can like, change how quickly the enzymes are reacting in the mash, and how effectively that's like, breaking breaking the starches and the sugars. It really, works a lot with that. It can, the yeast needs a certain amount of calcium can help things out. Even like a good amount of calcium can actually help, make the beer drop clear and stuff like that. All very
Oh,
nice things for West Coast IPAs. Then you get like
Exactly.
in the final product, yeah, the sulfate just kind of gives you that nice and drier mouthfeel on that, accentuates bitterness. So yeah, I don't know. It's a lot going on with the water. So
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, we were talking about gold medal and you were splitting hairs, right? That's what you do to win a gold medal, right? So,
y- yeah, I mean, there's a lot of world-class beers. Like there were, what was it? It was 292 entries in that category, and I know for a fact there is a ton of world-class beer in that that we happened to just beat out, and we got really you sweat and you put all the work in and all the resources in you've ever thought of and stuff like that, and hey, it comes through. It's nice to see work pay off.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so you've talked about malt, water, hops. You even talked about dextrose. Lastly, then, or at least I think lastly, unless there's another secret ingredient that you're holding out on us on, but the last ingredient that I know about then would be the yeast. I guess what species or strain, and then like any special things that you do there in terms of pitch rate or dry or wet or multiple
Um,
strains. I don't know.
yeah, no, honestly, nothing too crazy on the yeast. We're just using good old fermentus USO5 ale yeast. Ferments at 66 degrees. About halfway through fermentation, we ramp it up to 7 degrees Fahrenheit for a diacetyl rest. Um,
Okay.
honestly, nothing too crazy going on with our yeast on there. But
Uh, sorry, go
sorry, go
ahead.
ahead. No.
No, you go ahead.
Um, I feel like another like process we haven't quite touched on yet is kind of more like the dry hop process on it too, and it's just
Oh, okay.
we dry hop on the warm side. That was something I never really did at Peatsport. We were always like 60 degrees generally is how we did our dry hop, like drop the yeast out, get rid of that. But we do it generally on day 5 of fermentation at diacetyl rest temps. We've hit terminal gravity. The yeast has done its thing. We dump out what we can. There's still definitely yeast in suspension. And then we dry hop in there with that. And we'll definitely get a bit of a re-fermentation. That hop creep, basically the enzymes in the hops are converting sugars and the wort that you know, weren't really edible by the yeast before. They weren't able to be processed by it. But the hops kind of unlocks that, so it helps actually dry our beer out really nicely. And
Ah,
Mm.
at the warmer temps, we've kind of been liking the just like the bright fruity characteristics we get on that. Um,
okay.
yeah.
It sounds so good.
Um,
I'll mail you
I
some
do.
some of your guys'
Yes,
address
please.
when you're done with
Yes,
this.
please. Yes, please.
I do have a quick follow-up on the yeast. It's a fermentus, you said. USO5, I think you said.
Sir.
Um, that's a dry yeast. Do you just do is it like, do you find it better with the first pitch or do you find it better on the fifth generation or?
I like it. I feel like 3 to 5 generations in, especially depending on the beer that came before it. Uh, like on that one too, especially GABF batch, you're trying to control every little variable you can. So it's like, okay, this yeast has only grown in Blondale so far. There's no like hops to muddle it or anything. It's like the cleanest yeast
Oh,
I could produce at that spot. But it's it's chewed through a couple beers. Nothing particularly high gravity, so the yeast is still, strong and raring to go. Um, and yeah, after that, it's kind of got its warm up and is ready to go and chew through an IPA and ferment it out quick and clean. And yeah, so that's where I think like the prime spot in is like, yeah, like
okay.
generations 3 to 5 off of a nice, like clean, like, yeah, blonde ale, something like that.
Not too hoppy. Yeah.
Yeah, not too hoppy because I mean, especially, I was gonna say, we're getting that incognito in there and everything on that other hop products we use. I kind of just wanted like the cleanest possible profile because a little bit of the beer that you make is going to be in that yeast.
Correct.
It's grown up in that liquid, so it's going to have a little bit of the character of there. It's like, you know, if I make like a stout, I don't use that yeast for anything else. Like if unless I have another dark beer coming on, but it's like, nope, don't want you carrying anything over. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, keep it clean.
Um, Going back to all the IPAs that you make, how much do you vary your recipes for those IPAs? Do you just change the hops, or is every IPA get its own, from the ground up recipe?
Ideally, they all kind of get their ground up thing. There's definitely like, I feel like I have a couple different grain bills I enjoy using that I kind of rotate through. But it's always nice just having several going on because it just allows you to kind of explore a bit what you could do with the different ingredients without changing like a recipe that's already like beloved by regulars. I don't want to mess with that too much until I really know what it's going to do. So by having several IPAs, try to give them all a little bit of your more unique identity. Like Codebreaker is just two row Munich, touch of dextrose. Some of the other ones will use like a little bit of flaked rice to dry it out. I'm always partial to like a bag of like white wheat in there. It just adds a bit more like head retention, a little bit of body. And it's all like pretty like small amounts of it, but it's just those little like fine tuning things you can do a lot with.
Mhm.
Some I'll change the bitterness up, or I'll be like, okay, we're using more like really like fruity hops on this. We got a bunch of like New Zealand stuff on it, that kind of thing going on. Let's change the water profile. Let's dial that around a bit. Um, where they're all like, I don't know, they're all like cousins, I guess. They
Right.
have
Yeah.
like a lot of similar characteristics, but definitely coming from different inspirations, I guess, of like thoughts of what you want to do with the ingredients. I feel like a lot of times I write a recipe is just like, you know, I've got somewhere at a brewery I like, try a beer and just go like, holy shit, what is this? If I'm lucky enough the brewer's there, I can, hang out with them, like talk about it for a bit and just be like, okay, yeah, like this hop, but you blended it with that hop. Oh, that's really interesting. Okay, I'm gonna give that a try. And so you kind of have this idea of what you want to do, whether it's, you tried another beer or you got like a hop sample that, blew your mind or something. And just or it's, whether it's some new process that you really want to change up. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just nice trying to, you start with an idea and then you kind of build a recipe around it, I feel like. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. I like that. Thank you.
And that's a really great segue into our last question. So another Long Beach brewery, which was Ambitious Ales,
Yep.
won gold for their hazy IPA, which I love. A professional human being is the name of that beer, which is
Yeah, it's
that's
a
just
great
great.
name.
What's with Long Beach and IP? Is it camaraderie? Is it talking to each other? It's just obviously not the water because you have an RO.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm cheating on that part,
yeah,
so
but what is about Long Beach? Is it the Snoop Dogg thing? I don't know. Like, what do you got?
yeah,
That's all my
dankest beers
knowledge of.
around, dude.
Yeah. What do you think it is
Um,
about Long Beach that makes you all brew some really great gold medal winning beers?
yeah, I mean, one thing I think is really cool, honestly, and this is probably a lot of it too. Like I mentioned before, I spent a lot of time talking to Ian at Ism, who got gold at World Beer Cup for West Coast IPA.
Hmm.
Um, and it's just like I think it's a big part is the camaraderie. Everyone's really open
Right.
on stuff. Like, straight up show people my recipes. I don't care. Your process is gonna be different, and I just want to, I want good beer everywhere I go, obviously. So, down to share things and learn and grow because that's a big part of where I've gotten to where I am now. And just the ambitious guys, I think I probably see them like at this point, like once a week almost. I'm over there just having beers and
Nice.
yeah, it's we're all really open with each other's recipes. I feel like we just all want to make better beer. We're all like really passionate about that. Um, at the end of the day, I just want to make the best possible beer I can make, and I think that's all what they think too. And it's not really like there's no like bitter rivalry or anything. I mean, I'm not sure if I hugged anyone more than the ambitious brewers because the all of us up there being like, "Holy shit, you guys, can you believe this?" You know, like the two biggest categories, and we're like, 5 miles away from each other. Insane. Um, yeah, I think it's really the camaraderie. I think we're surrounded by a lot of great breweries in the area. In Long Beach or in LA and Orange County and such. Um, San Diego. Like we have access to a lot of great beer that we all kind of, get to try and stuff. I think we're located in a great place, a lot of good inspiration around us. And then all of us are really open with all our recipes. Like when I make a new beer, like I love having the excuse to go to one of the neighboring breweries. Like if I make like a lager, I'm going to go the 10 Mile. If I make an IPA, I'm going to go to Ambitious and Ism. If I, it's like that kind of thing where it's like, okay, you're the this guy. You'll give me some honest feedback on this and I can make a better beer next time.
That's
Uh,
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for spreading around a lot of hugs and therefore proving that you are yourself a professional human being. And thank you for sharing how you have broken the code on West Coast IPA.
Oh,
Before we
Don.
let you before we let you go, can you share
He
your
said the line.
You did,
social
yeah.
media
Well,
handles so everybody can be envious of all the amazing beers that you're brewing and people can't try unless they come visit you.
Yeah. So my Instagram is just at Kaneorama. So Kaneo and then Rama because that
Perfect.
was something my dad and my sister would just call me like Kano and stuff like that a lot of times. So I was like, oh,
Perfect.
okay. Kaneorama. That's a good handle.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Thank
thank
you,
you so
sir. Thank you for your
much.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. This was really fun. Hope it didn't ramble on too long, but
No,
had
No,
it
a great
was
it's
time
great. It was
perfect.
talking with
wonderful.
fellow
Yeah.
passionate beer people.
Yeah, I love
Wonderful.
it. Cheers,
Yeah.
Kane. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers.
Okay, so and we learned that the West Coast IPA really did exist. It's a thing.
It's
Bitterness and clarity are
fascinating. It
things.
sounds
Yeah.
it sounds really good. I'd love to try one day.
What did you think of that episode? I really like I liked both of our guests. I love that, hops, everybody just thinks of hops as this flavor thing, and there's so much more to it. And I just love that it's not just hops, as we learned from Kane, like water and
Or the
mashing
way that
and
hops are processed.
yes.
So I think that's really interesting as well. I also really love that everyone apparently loves Chinook, and I don't understand why no one's brewing with it. So
Yeah,
if
and
you're
Columbus.
listening, and if
Uh,
you're listening to this and you're a brewer, just buy some Chinook for me.
Cascade, Centennial.
Do it for your old pal M
Yeah.
and buy some Chinook.
Yeah. Yes. Me too. I second that. Thank you, everybody, for listening to my TED Talk. Please, everybody, visit allaboutbeer.com and follow us on social media at allaboutbeer. And please visit patreon.com/allaboutbeer to support this show and others. If you have questions for the experts, please email us podcast@allaboutbeer.com. That's also the email for feedback, suggestions, or to inquire about supporting this show through advertising. Em, how can people reach out to you?
I am at Pints and Panels across social media, and my website is pintsandpanels.com. What about you, Don?
I am at the Dawn of Beer on X, Threads, Blue Sky, and Instagram. And I always love receiving emails, so please send me an email, dawn@thedawnofbeer.com. If you enjoy the show, please share it with your friends, post about us on social media, and like and subscribe to the show. Please help us spread the word of good beer. Here's a final word from our sponsor.
Discover 1906 Reserva Especial, a distinguished Hellesbock with 6.5% ABV that embodies brewing heritage and unique character. Made with the finest Pilsner and toasted malts and Hallertau Pearl hops, this lager delivers a truly elegant experience. Its brilliant amber hue and toasted malt aromas, enriched with caramel and coffee notes, are perfectly balanced by the floral and herbal nuances of the hops. On the palate, toasted flavors dominate, offering a warm, harmonious finish. Brewed entirely in Galicia, Spain, 1906 Reserva Especial embodies the highest standard of excellence. Know more about it on estrellagalicia.com.
This show is produced by All About Beer. Visit allaboutbeer.com for articles, notes on this show and others, and to connect via the newsletter and social media. Cheers!
Cheers, everyone.
Chinook.
Chinook, just do it. Chinook. God damn it.